Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Martinez, and I'm 29 years old. Until 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew my younger brother Marcus better than anyone in the world. We've been inseparable since childhood, supporting each other through our parents' bitter divorce and building a bond that I believed was unbreakable. That was before his fiancée, Isabella Sterling, and her ultra-wealthy family decided I wasn't worthy of their perfect wedding. What started as exclusion from bridal events escalated into fraud, manipulation, and ultimately a confrontation that changed everything. Let me tell you how a $50,000 wedding deposit nearly destroyed my family and my finances, and how standing up for myself saved my brother from the biggest mistake of his life. Growing up in a modest suburb of Chicago, Marcus and I learned early that we only had each other to rely on. When I was 14 and he was 11, our parents' marriage imploded spectacularly. Dad moved out after Mom discovered his affair with his secretary, and what followed was 2 years of screaming matches, court battles, and using Marcus and me as pawns in their emotional warfare. While they fought over who got the house, the car, and even our childhood photos, Marcus and I created our own little sanctuary upstairs in my bedroom. I helped him with his math homework, taught him how to tie his shoes properly, and made sure he ate something other than cereal for dinner when our parents were too busy arguing with lawyers to notice we existed. Marcus, despite being younger, became my emotional anchor. He'd leave encouraging notes in my backpack before big tests, defend me against neighborhood bullies who made fun of my secondhand clothes, and had an uncanny ability to make me laugh even on the darkest days. After the divorce was finalized, we maintained that closeness even as we went to different colleges. I studied communications at Northwestern, while Marcus earned a computer science degree at University of Illinois. We texted daily, called each other every Sunday, and met for coffee at least twice a month once we were both working in Chicago. Marcus landed a job as a software developer at a growing tech company, while I built a career in digital marketing at a mid-sized agency. 2 years ago, everything changed when Marcus called me at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, practically vibrating with excitement through the phone. "Becca, I met someone," he announced without preamble. "Remember that charity gala my company sponsored? The one I didn't want to go to because I hate networking events? Well, I'm glad I went because I met her. Isabella Sterling. She runs her family's philanthropic foundation, and she's incredible. Smart, beautiful, successful, and somehow interested in me." The way he described Isabella made me genuinely happy for him. Marcus had always been shy around women, more comfortable with computer code than romantic conversations. If someone had managed to break through his shell, she must be special. When he asked if I wanted to meet her the following weekend, I immediately agreed. Our first meeting was at a trendy downtown restaurant that I'd never been able to afford on my salary. Isabella arrived precisely on time, and I understood immediately why Marcus was smitten. She was stunning in an effortless way that spoke of good genetics and expensive maintenance. Her auburn hair fell in perfect waves, her makeup was professionally applied, and her outfit, a simple black dress with what I suspected were real pearls, probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Rebecca," she exclaimed, greeting me with their kisses that didn't quite make contact. "Marcus has told me so much about you. You work in marketing, right? How fascinating." There was something in her tone that made fascinating sound like quaint, but I pushed the thought aside. First impressions could be deceiving, and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Throughout dinner, Isabella was charming and engaging, asking thoughtful questions about my work and sharing amusing stories about the nonprofit world. She laughed at Marcus's jokes, touched his arm affectionately, and seemed genuinely interested in his software development projects. Still, I noticed subtle things that bothered me. The way she corrected his pronunciation of certain wine terms, how she suggested he might want to consider updating his wardrobe, and her casual mentions of places and experiences that were clearly outside our financial reach. "We're thinking of spending Christmas in Aspen this year," she mentioned while reviewing the dessert menu. "My family has a chalet there, and I'd love for Marcus to experience real skiing, not just those little hills in Wisconsin." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Actually, Becca and I usually spend Christmas together. It's kind of our tradition since the divorce." Isabella's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, family traditions are important. I'm sure we can work something out. But her tone suggested she found our tradition inconvenient rather than sweet. A month later, Marcus invited me to dinner at the Sterling family estate, and I began to understand just how different Isabella's world was from ours. The house, mansion, really sat on 20 acres in the most exclusive suburb north of Chicago. The circular driveway could have accommodated a small parking lot, and the front entrance featured columns that belonged in a museum. Charles and Victoria Sterling greeted us in a formal living room that was larger than my entire apartment. Charles, distinguished and silver-haired, immediately launched into questions about Marcus's career prospects and investment strategies. Victoria, an older, more refined version of Isabella, evaluated me with the kind of cool assessment usually reserved for livestock auctions. "Rebecca, Isabella mentioned you work in marketing," Victoria said, making it sound like I collected garbage for a living. "Digital marketing, isn't it? Such a modern field." "Yes, I specialize in social media campaigns and content strategy for small to medium businesses," I replied, trying to sound professional rather than defensive. "How entrepreneurial of you," Charles added, though his tone suggested entrepreneurship was slightly distasteful. "Isabella's foundation works with several marketing firms, of course. Global agencies with offices in New York and London. The scale is quite different, I'm sure." Throughout the evening, I became acutely aware of every aspect of my appearance and background that marked me as an outsider. My department store dress among their designer clothing, my student loan debt versus their generational wealth, my state school education compared to their Ivy League pedigrees. The Sterlings moved through life with the casual confidence that comes from never having to worry about money, never having to check your bank balance before making plans, never having to choose between groceries and gas. Despite feeling completely out of place, I smiled, engaged in conversation, and did my best to support Marcus, who was clearly trying to impress Isabella's parents. When Charles asked pointed questions about our family background, I smoothly redirected to Marcus's professional achievements. When Victoria made subtle digs about our parents' divorce, I changed the subject to Isabella's foundation work. After 18 months of dating, Marcus called me during my lunch break, something he rarely did unless it was an emergency. "Becca, I'm going to propose," he announced, his voice a mixture of excitement and terror. "This weekend. Isabella's been dropping hints about a spring wedding, and I think she's the one. Will you help me pick out a ring?" I'm completely lost. We spent Saturday morning visiting jewelry stores, and I watched my practical, budget-conscious brother consider diamonds that cost more than I made in 6 months. The ring he eventually chose was beautiful, a classic solitaire setting with a stone so large it could probably be seen from space. When he asked if it was too much, I could see the doubt in his eyes warring with his desire to give Isabella everything she expected. "If she's the one, then it's perfect," I told him, swallowing my concerns about the financial burden he was taking on. Isabella said yes, of course, and Marcus called me immediately afterward, breathless with relief and joy. I pushed aside my reservations and focused on his happiness. My brother was in love, and that was what mattered. The wedding planning began immediately, with Victoria Sterling taking charge like a general marshalling troops for battle. The venue was a historic estate with formal gardens and a ballroom that could accommodate 400 guests. The estimated budget quickly escalated to $300,000, a figure that made me dizzy when Marcus mentioned it casually over coffee. "That's a lot," I said carefully, not wanting to rain on his parade. "Are you comfortable with that level of expense?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Isabella's parents are covering most of it. They say it's an investment in our future, and honestly, the connections we'll make at the wedding could be valuable for my career. Charles has already introduced me to several potential business partners." "And you're okay with that? With them essentially buying your wedding?" "It's not buying," he protested, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "It's just how wealthy families do things. They invest in their children's futures." When Marcus asked me to be his best woman, breaking with tradition to honor our special bond, I was touched beyond words. It felt like a recognition of everything we'd been through together, all the ways we'd supported each other when no one else would. Isabella's reaction, however, was less enthusiastic. "Are you sure about that?" I overheard her asking Marcus when she thought I was out of earshot. It's not traditional, and honestly, it might look strange in the photos. Rebecca's sweet, but she's not exactly polished. Maybe she could do a reading instead. When Marcus insisted, Isabella acquiesced with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, if it's important to you, we'll make it work somehow. The first major warning sign came during bridesmaid dress shopping. Isabella had arranged for all 8 bridesmaids to meet at an exclusive boutique downtown, the kind of place where appointments were required and champagne was served in crystal flutes. I arrived to find Isabella's friends, all perfectly groomed women with names like Ashton, Brooke, and Sloane, discussing their recent trips to Europe and their families' summer houses. Everyone, this is Rebecca, Marcus's sister, Isabella announced with a smile that seemed slightly forced. The other women offered polite greetings before returning to their conversations about prep school reunions and charity galas. While waiting for my turn in the fitting room, I overheard Isabella speaking to her maid of honor, Ashton, in what she probably thought was a whisper. I know it's awkward having her here. She doesn't really fit with our group, does she? No social connections, no style sense. But Marcus insisted. So what could I do? Ashton's response was equally cutting. Well, at least she's thin. We can put her at the end of the photos and crop her out if needed. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I forced myself to remain composed. This wasn't about me. It was about supporting Marcus on his wedding day. When the consultant, Madame Dubois, announced that the bridesmaid dresses started at $4,000 each, I felt my stomach drop. $4,000 was more than I spent on clothing in an entire year. It was my monthly take-home pay. There seems to be some confusion, I said quietly to Isabella when we had a moment alone. I can't afford a $4,000 dress. Isabella's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in surprise. Oh, I assumed you knew this would be a high-end wedding. Everything has to be perfect, you understand. If cost is really an issue, I'm sure Marcus would be happy to cover it for you. The suggestion that I should ask my younger brother to pay for my bridesmaid dress was mortifying, but I didn't want to create a scene in front of the other women. When I mentioned the situation to Marcus later, he immediately offered to pay without a second thought. Don't worry about it, Becca. It's no big deal, he insisted, though I noticed him check his banking app twice during our conversation. Marcus, $4,000 for a dress I'll wear once is excessive. And Isabella made me feel like I was being difficult for questioning it. He sighed, running his hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. Isabella comes from a different world, Becca. This is normal for her. Please just go with it for me. I reluctantly agreed, but our usual easy communication felt strained. Marcus seemed increasingly distant. Our weekly coffee dates frequently canceled due to wedding planning emergencies or social events with Isabella's crowd. The bridal shower was another exercise in feeling like an outsider. Held at the Sterling Country Club, the event featured a 7-course lunch, a live string quartet, and gifts that made my handmade photo album look pathetic. I'd spent weeks creating a memory book filled with pictures of Marcus growing up, stories about our childhood, and heartfelt messages welcoming Isabella to our family. When Isabella opened it, she flipped through the pages quickly, said, "How thoughtful," and immediately moved on to exclaim over a crystal vase from one of her sorority sisters. My carefully crafted gift was set aside and forgotten while she gushed over expensive household items I couldn't even identify. Victoria Sterling approached me during the dessert course, champagne flute in hand and predatory smile in place. "Rebecca, dear, I understand you'll be attending the wedding alone. No boyfriend." "That's right," I confirmed, taking a large bite of cake to avoid elaborating. "Such a shame. A woman your age should be focused on finding a suitable partner. Perhaps after the wedding, we could introduce you to some appropriate men from our social circle. With some effort, a new wardrobe, maybe some etiquette lessons, you might have potential." I nearly choked on my dessert. "I'm quite happy with my life as it is, thank you." "Of course you'd say that, dear. Pride is easier than self-improvement." She patted my arm condescendingly. "By the way, have you arranged your family's contribution to the wedding fund yet? The $50,000 deposit." I stared at her in confusion. I'm sorry, what deposit? This is the first I'm hearing about any family contribution. Victoria's expression shifted to surprise. Oh my, I assumed Marcus had discussed this with you. Both families traditionally contribute to wedding expenses. Since your parents are unavailable, we naturally assumed you would handle the Martinez family portion. Before I could respond, she was called away by the event coordinator, leaving me sitting there in shock. Marcus had explicitly told me that the Sterlings were covering all wedding costs. Why was Victoria now suggesting I owed them money? When I tried to discuss it with Marcus the next day, he seemed uncomfortable and quickly changed the subject. Don't worry about what Victoria said. Everything's being handled, he assured me, but his evasiveness only increased my concern. The following week, I discovered through Facebook that my role had been changed from best woman to regular bridesmaid without anyone bothering to inform me directly. When I called Marcus, Isabella answered his phone. Oh, Rebecca, hi. Yes, we had to make some adjustments for the ceremony's visual balance. Marcus meant to tell you, but we've been so busy with final preparations. It's actually better this way, less pressure on you. The dismissive way she handled what should have been an important conversation stung, but what hurt more was that Marcus hadn't told me himself. When I finally reached him later, he seemed distracted and apologetic but not particularly concerned about my feelings. It's just logistics, Becca. The important thing is that you're there to support us. 2 months before the wedding, my friend Julia texted me with concerning news. Hey, did you know they moved the wedding date up? Just got my updated invitation for May instead of July. Weird they didn't tell you first since your family. I stared at my phone in disbelief. The wedding date had been changed by 2 months, and no one had informed me. I checked my mail, my email, even my spam folder. Nothing. When I finally reached Marcus, he sounded harried and dismissive. Oh, right, Isabella's grandfather is having surgery in July, so we moved everything up. I thought Isabella told you. Marcus, I'm your sister and a bridesmaid. How could you not tell me directly that your wedding date changed? I've been swamped with work and wedding stuff, Becca. Isabella said she'd handle updating everyone. Look, I have to run. We're meeting with the caterer in 10 minutes. He hung up before I could respond, leaving me with a growing sense that I was being systematically excluded from my own brother's wedding. The bachelor and bachelorette parties were supposedly a joint wine-tasting event followed by separate evening celebrations. I only learned about it when Julia posted pictures on Instagram. When I texted to ask why I hadn't been invited, she replied, Isabella told everyone you were invited but couldn't make it due to work commitments. When I confronted Isabella directly, her response was smoothly convincing. Rebecca, I sent you an email 3 weeks ago. I even asked Marcus if you'd responded, and he said you were probably just busy with a big project at work. You do work such long hours. The gaslighting was so skillful that I almost questioned my own memory. But a thorough search of every email folder confirmed that no invitation had ever been sent. The final dress fitting was when everything began to unravel. When I arrived at the boutique, Madame Dubois looked confused to see me. Miss Martinez, we weren't expecting you today. Your fitting is not on our schedule. But all the bridesmaids have final fittings today, I insisted, showing her the text confirmation on my phone. Madame Dubois disappeared into the back room and returned looking uncomfortable. I apologize, but it appears your dress order was canceled 3 weeks ago. According to our records, the bride called to remove one bridesmaid from the order. My stomach dropped as I processed this information. Cancelled by whom? The bride, Miss Sterling. Your measurements have been removed from our system. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. So sorry about the confusion at the boutique. There was a miscommunication with the orders. Don't worry, we'll rush order your dress from another designer. These things happen. Instead of texting back, I drove straight to Marcus's apartment. I found him packing for yet another wedding-related trip, this time a weekend getaway to the Sterling family's lake house. My bridesmaid dress was canceled, Marcus, I announced without preamble. Isabella removed me from the order 3 weeks ago, and now you're packing for another event I was invited to. He looked genuinely shocked. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. It's not a mistake. The boutique has records. Isabella canceled my dress order, and I suspect she's been systematically excluding me from wedding events while making it look like accidents or miscommunications. Marcus sat heavily on his couch, looking torn between defending his fiancée and acknowledging what was becoming obvious. Isabella just wants everything to be perfect, Becca. Maybe she thought. What? That I don't fit into her perfect wedding vision? That I'm not good enough for her social circle? My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. That's not fair, he protested weakly. Isabella has been nothing but welcoming to you. I grabbed his wedding planning binder from the coffee table and flipped it open to reveal a seating chart. My name had been crossed out from the head table, with Table 8, Family, written beside it, in Isabella's neat handwriting. When were you planning to tell me I'm not even sitting at the head table anymore? I asked, holding the chart toward him. Before he could answer, my phone chimed with an email from someone named Patricia Williams at Premier Wedding Planning. The subject line read, Urgent. Final family contribution reminder. The email was brief but alarming. Dear Ms. Martinez, this is a final reminder that the family contribution deposit of $50,000 is due by Friday to secure all remaining vendors. Please confirm your payment method at your earliest convenience. Best regards, Patricia Williams, Premier Wedding Planning. I stared at the screen, my hands beginning to shake. Marcus. Why is a wedding planner asking me for $50,000? His face went pale as he read the email over my shoulder. There must be some mistake. Let me call Patricia. No, I said firmly, pulling my phone back. I'm calling her right now. Patricia answered on the second ring, her voice professionally cheerful. Premier Wedding Planning, Patricia speaking. Hi, Patricia. This is Rebecca Martinez. I just received your email about a family deposit, and I'm confused because this is the first I'm hearing about any financial obligation. There was a pause. Let me check our files. Yes, according to our documentation, you were designated as the financial guarantor for the Martinez family contribution 3 months ago. I have the signed agreement right here. My heart was pounding. That's impossible. I never signed anything. I'm looking at the document now, Miss Martinez. It clearly shows your signature dated February 18th. Would you like me to email you a copy? While waiting for the email, I glared at Marcus, who was pacing nervously around his living room. Please tell me you didn't forge my signature on a financial document. Becca, it's complicated, he began, but I cut him off. It's not complicated. Did you, or did you not use my name on a legal document without my permission? The email arrived before he could answer. The contract clearly showed what appeared to be my signature on an agreement to provide $50,000 as the Martinez family contribution to wedding expenses. I recognized it immediately. It was copied from a birthday card I'd given Marcus months earlier. Oh my God, Marcus, I whispered, feeling physically sick. You actually did it. You forged my signature. I didn't forge anything, he protested, then immediately backtracked. I mean, Isabella said it was just a formality. Her parents needed someone from my family listed on the planning documents for legal reasons, but they were going to cover everything. She promised it was just paperwork. So, you let your fiancé commit fraud using my identity? Do you realize this could destroy my credit? That I could be legally liable for money I never agreed to pay? Marcus collapsed onto his couch, his head in his hands. I didn't think they would actually ask you for the money. Isabella swore her parents would handle everything. Just then, the apartment door opened, and Isabella walked in as if she owned the place. She looked immaculate as always, but her expression hardened when she saw me. Rebecca, what a surprise. I thought we were meeting later, Marcus. Isabella, did you tell the wedding planner that I agreed to pay $50,000? I asked directly. Instead of looking shocked or apologetic, Isabella simply sighed as if I were being tedious. I see we're having this conversation now. Yes, we included you on the financial documents. I honestly thought you'd want to contribute to your brother's wedding. The Sterlings are covering over $250,000. Your family should handle something. My family? I am his family, and neither of us has that kind of money lying around. Isabella's manicured hand waved dismissively. I assumed you had savings. Besides, this is your only brother's wedding. Surely it's worth some financial sacrifice. Some sacrifice? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. $50,000 is more than my annual salary. Look, Rebecca, Isabella's tone became condescending. I've tried to include you in this wedding despite the obvious differences in our backgrounds. But you've been difficult from the beginning. You question every decision, you don't fit in with our social circle, and frankly, your negative attitude is stressing Marcus out during what should be the happiest time of his life. I looked at my brother, waiting for him to defend me, to recognize the manipulation happening right in front of him. Instead, he sighed deeply. Maybe Isabella's right, Becca. Maybe it would be easier if you weren't in the wedding party. There's clearly too much tension. His words hit me like a physical blow. After everything we'd been through together, all the years of supporting each other, he was choosing Isabella's toxic manipulation over our relationship. Are you seriously uninviting me from your wedding? I asked quietly. It's not uninviting, Isabella corrected smoothly. It's recognizing that your presence might create unnecessary drama on our special day. I grabbed my purse, tears threatening to spill over. I can't believe you're choosing her over family, Marcus. She's shown you exactly who she is, and you're still blind to it. As I headed for the door, Isabella called after me sweetly, We'll still need that deposit by Friday, though. Contractually speaking. I spent the next day alternating between crying and staring at my apartment ceiling, trying to process how everything had gone so wrong. The brother who had been my anchor through our parents' divorce, who had celebrated every one of my professional achievements, who had called me first with every major life update, was now a stranger under Isabella's influence. When my friend Julia called to check on me, I finally broke down and told her everything. Rebecca, this is insane, she gasped. What they're doing isn't just cruel, it's potentially illegal. Have you checked your credit report recently? I hadn't, but Julia's question sent a chill through me. If they were willing to forge my signature once, what else might they have done? That evening, I pulled my credit report and discovered 7 recent inquiries from various wedding vendors: the caterer, florist, rental company, photographer, videographer, venue, and transportation service. Someone had been using my personal information to apply for credit with wedding suppliers. My hands shaking, I called my friend David, who worked as a paralegal specializing in financial crimes. Based on what you're telling me, this is identity theft and fraud, he confirmed after hearing the full story. They've used your personal information without consent and are now attempting to collect money based on fraudulent representations. You need to document everything and consider filing a police report. The thought of filing charges against my own brother made me feel sick, but David was right about the seriousness of the situation. Rebecca, I know he's your brother, but he's allowing his fiancé to commit crimes using your identity. This could impact your credit score, your ability to get loans, even your job if background checks show financial irregularities. Over the next 2 days, I systematically gathered evidence. Screenshots of the forged contract, copies of the credit inquiries, text messages from Isabella and Marcus, emails from the wedding planner, and documentation of all the events I'd been excluded from. Looking at everything laid out chronologically made the pattern of manipulation crystal clear. What hurt most wasn't the money or even the fraud. It was realizing that Isabella had been systematically isolating Marcus from me from the very beginning. Every exclusion, every slight, every miscommunication had been carefully orchestrated to push me out of his life. And Marcus, desperate to be accepted into the Sterling family's world, had allowed it to happen. For 3 days, I wrestled with what to do next. Part of me wanted to file charges and protect myself legally. Another part wanted to walk away and let Marcus learn the hard way what kind of person he was marrying. But the biggest part of me, the sister who had always protected her little brother, couldn't abandon him to Isabella's manipulation without one final attempt to save him. On Thursday evening, I learned through social media that the Sterlings were hosting a pre-wedding celebration at their estate that night. The entire wedding party and both families would be there. It would be my last chance to reach Marcus before Saturday's ceremony. I dressed carefully in a simple navy blue dress that was professional and impossible to criticize. I loaded all my evidence onto a tablet and made backup copies on a USB drive. Then I drove to the Sterling estate, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The security guard at the gate initially refused entry, saying my name wasn't on the guest list. But when I mentioned having urgent legal documents regarding the wedding that required immediate attention, he reluctantly called the house. To my surprise, I was granted access, probably because they assumed I was bringing signed financial papers. I parked between a Mercedes and a BMW, took a deep breath, and walked up to the imposing front entrance. A uniformed server opened the door before I could knock, and I could hear conversation and clinking glasses from the formal dining room. My entrance caused an immediate hush. Around an elegantly set table sat the entire wedding party, both families, and several people I didn't recognize, likely business associates or extended family. Marcus's face went white when he saw me, while Isabella's expression hardened into controlled fury. "Rebecca," Victoria Sterling broke the silence, her voice arctic. "We weren't expecting you." The invitation clearly stated family only. "I wasn't invited," I replied calmly, remaining in the doorway. "But since my name and financial information have been used without my consent for this wedding, I thought I should attend at least one event." Charles Sterling stood, his imposing height clearly meant to intimidate. "Young lady, if you're here about the family contribution, this is hardly the appropriate time or place." "I'm not here about money," I interrupted. "I'm here because fraud has been committed in my name, and I wanted to give everyone involved a chance to make this right before I'm forced to pursue legal action." The room erupted in murmurs. Marcus half rose from his chair, his face a mixture of shame and panic. "Becca, please, can we discuss this privately?" "We're past that point, Marcus," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I've tried discussing this privately. Now everyone needs to understand exactly what's been happening." I moved to the head of the table and opened my tablet, connecting it to the room's projection system, clearly designed for Charles's business presentations. 3 months ago, this document was submitted to Premier Wedding Planning with what appears to be my signature. I began, displaying the forged contract professionally. "I never saw this document before Monday, and I certainly never signed it." Patricia Williams, the wedding planner, was seated near Victoria. Her eyes widened as she looked between the document and me. "Furthermore," I continued, "my personal information has been used to submit credit applications to 7 different wedding vendors without my knowledge or consent." I displayed the credit report. "And finally, I've been systematically excluded from wedding events while simultaneously being held financially responsible for them." Victoria's composed mask slipped slightly. "These are simply misunderstandings that can be resolved." "They're not misunderstandings," I said firmly. "They're deliberate actions taken primarily by your daughter, with my brother's knowledge and complicity." Isabella stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "How dare you crash our family dinner and make these ridiculous accusations? Marcus, are you going to let her destroy our evening with these lies?" All eyes turned to Marcus, who looked miserable and conflicted. For a moment, I saw a flash of the little boy who used to trust his big sister to always tell him the truth. "Is it true?" he asked me quietly. "All of it." "Yes," I said simply. "I have all the evidence right here. Isabella and possibly her parents have been using my financial information without consent while systematically excluding me from your life." Charles Sterling cleared his throat. "This is all very dramatic, but easily resolved. Name your price, Miss Martinez. 10,000? 20? Let's settle this unfortunate misunderstanding right now." He pulled out a checkbook with casual confidence. The ease with which he offered to buy me off, as if my relationship with my brother had a price tag, crystallized everything wrong with the Sterling family. They truly believed that everything and everyone could be purchased. "My relationship with my brother isn't for sale," I stated firmly. "And your attempt to bribe me only further demonstrates your family's character." Isabella turned to Marcus, her face a perfect mask of wounded innocence. "Are you going to let her ruin everything we've built? Everything we've planned? She's always been jealous of what we have, Marcus." She's bitter and alone, and she wants to destroy our happiness. Marcus looked between us, clearly struggling. Then he stood and walked slowly to the projected document on the wall, studying the signature carefully. "This is from the birthday card Rebecca gave me," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I recognize the little flower she always draws next to her name." He turned to Isabella, his voice growing stronger. "You said this was just a formality. You promised me no one would actually ask Rebecca for money." "Of course we were going to ask her," Victoria interjected coldly. "Why should we pay for everything? It's traditional for both families to contribute." "My family isn't wealthy," Marcus replied, his spine straightening. "You've known that from the beginning. Rebecca works hard for every dollar she earns. She can't afford this, and you know it." Isabella grabbed his arm desperately. "Baby, we can discuss this later. She's just trying to come between us like she always does."
"No, Isabella."
Marcus's voice was calm but firm. "Rebecca has never tried to come between us. In fact, she's bent over backward trying to support our relationship despite the way your family has treated her. She's the most important person in my life, and I've let you push her away. I've let you manipulate me into hurting her." "Well, if she's the most important person in your life," Isabella's composure finally cracked, her beautiful face contorting with rage, "then you've just made your choice very clear. It's her or me, Marcus. Right now." The room held its collective breath. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. Then he slowly removed the engagement ring from his finger and placed it gently on the table. "I choose my sister," he said quietly. "I choose the person who has loved me unconditionally my entire life. I choose honesty over whatever this has become." He gestured around the opulent dining room. Isabella's gasp was theatrical. "You cannot be serious. After everything my family has invested in you, after all the opportunities we've provided." "That's exactly the problem," Marcus replied sadly. "It was always an investment to you, a transaction. You never really loved me for who I am. You wanted to remake me into someone worthy of your world." Charles Sterling's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You'll regret this decision, young man. The connections I was prepared to offer you would have set you up for life." "I'm sure I would have paid for those connections many times over," Marcus responded, moving to stand beside me. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry. For everything. Let's go home." As we walked out together, leaving behind the stunned silence of the Sterling dining room, I heard Victoria's sharp voice. "Patricia, cancel everything. Immediately." The wedding that had nearly destroyed our relationship was over before it began. The drive back to my apartment was initially quiet, both of us processing what had just happened. Marcus stared out the passenger window, looking simultaneously relieved and devastated. "I can't believe I just did that," he whispered, more to himself than to me. "Are you okay?" I asked, glancing over briefly. He let out a shaky laugh. "No, not at all. I just ended my engagement in front of 30 people after discovering my fiancé committed fraud using my sister's identity." He ran his hands through his hair. "But also, yes, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in months." When we arrived at my apartment, I made us both hot chocolate, our childhood comfort drink for difficult conversations. We sat on my worn but comfortable couch, mugs in hand, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between us. "I need to apologize, Becca," Marcus began, his voice thick with emotion. "I let Isabella come between us. I ignored every red flag, made excuses for her behavior, and worst of all, I didn't protect you from her manipulation." "Why didn't you tell me about the financial pressure they were putting on you?" I asked gently. Marcus stared into his mug. At first it was subtle. Comments about how generous they were being, hints that I should be contributing more. Then Charles started mentioning Isabella's ex-boyfriends, how one bought her a car for her birthday, how another took her whole family to Europe. The message was clear. I wasn't bringing enough to the table. So, when they suggested using my name, you went along with it. He nodded miserably. Isabella made it sound so reasonable. She said it was just a formality, that her parents would actually cover everything but needed my family represented on the documents for appearances. She promised no one would ever actually ask you for money. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her, he corrected. I was in so deep, Becca. The Sterlings represented everything I thought I wanted. Success, connections, acceptance into their world. And Isabella. He paused, searching for words. When she focused her attention on you, it was like being in a spotlight. She made me feel special, chosen. I reached over and squeezed his hand. The Sterlings are expert manipulators, Marcus. They've had a lifetime of practice. That doesn't excuse what I did, he insisted. I knew using your signature was wrong. I knew excluding you from wedding events would hurt you. I chose to look the other way because confronting Isabella meant possibly losing her, and I tied my whole sense of worth to her approval. What will you do now? I asked softly. Marcus set down his mug and leaned back, looking exhausted. Honestly, I don't know. My apartment is filled with wedding gifts I'll have to return. Half my friends are Isabella's friends. My job. He trailed off. Your job? I prompted, concerned. Charles got me an interview at his friend's investment firm. I was supposed to start there next month, double the salary, corner office. He laughed bitterly. Another way they were buying control over my life. We talked until nearly dawn, piecing together how completely the Sterlings had worked to integrate Marcus into their world while systematically cutting his ties to his past. They had introduced him to better friends, suggested more suitable hobbies, even encouraged him to limit contact with our parents because their divorce was embarrassing to explain at social events. The next morning, Marcus called Patricia Williams to officially cancel the wedding and determine what financial obligations remained. To our relief, she informed us that while deposits were non-refundable, she would personally ensure my name was removed from all documentation and that no vendors would pursue me for payment. For what it's worth, Miss Martinez, she added quietly, I had no idea the financial agreement wasn't legitimate. The Sterlings assured me everything was properly arranged, and frankly, I was intimidated by their reputation. I should have verified the signature independently. Over the following weeks, Marcus temporarily moved into my spare room while sorting out his life. We worked together to return wedding gifts, notify guests of the cancellation, and deal with the legal aftermath of the fraud committed in my name. The Sterlings, predictably, threatened legal action for wedding costs incurred, but backed down quickly when David sent a formal letter detailing the fraud and identity theft we were prepared to pursue charges for. Apparently, they decided that distance from the situation was preferable to prolonged legal battles that might generate negative publicity for their social standing. As word spread about what had happened, we received an unexpected outpouring of support. Several of Marcus's friends confessed they had always felt something was off about Isabella, but hadn't wanted to interfere. One of the groomsmen, Tyler, even admitted that Isabella had tried to exclude him from the wedding party because she felt his blue-collar background didn't fit their aesthetic. I should have said something, Tyler told us over dinner one night. But Isabella made it clear that questioning her decisions meant being cut out entirely. She had this way of making you feel like you were lucky to be included in her world. 6 weeks after the dramatic dinner at the Sterling estate, Marcus received a job offer from a tech startup that had been following his work for months. No connections required, just recognition of his genuine talent and innovative thinking. He found a new apartment, began rebuilding his confidence, and slowly returned to being the authentic person he had been before meeting Isabella. You know what's strange? He said to me over dinner one evening. I'm not even sure I ever really loved Isabella. I loved the idea of her, the status of being with her, the validation of being chosen by someone from that world. But when I try to think of genuine moments of connection between us, moments where I felt truly seen and accepted for who I am, I come up empty. The most surprising development came when 2 of Isabella's bridesmaids, Ashton and Brooke, reached out to me privately. Both had been friends with Isabella since college and had witnessed similar patterns of manipulation in her previous relationships. She always targets successful men from different social backgrounds, Ashton explained during a coffee meeting that felt surreal given our previous interactions. Men who will be impressed by her world and willing to do anything to be accepted into it. Usually, she gets bored after a few months and moves on, but with Marcus, it went further than we'd ever seen. Why are you telling me this? I asked, genuinely curious. Brooke looked uncomfortable. Because we enabled it. We saw what was happening to your brother, to your relationship with him, and we said nothing. We've been complicit in Isabella's behavior for years, and watching what happened to Marcus was a wake-up call. Their confession revealed that Isabella had a pattern of dating men she considered projects, successful but socially naive individuals she could mold and control. Previous boyfriends had suffered similar isolation from their families and friends, though none had gone as far as signing fraudulent financial documents. 3 months after the canceled wedding, Marcus met Sarah, a graphic designer with a warm laugh and zero pretensions, at a volunteer event we'd started attending together. Their relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine connection rather than manipulation and social climbing. The first time he brought Sarah to dinner at my place, I watched them interact with relief and joy. There was no power dynamic, no attempts to change each other, just two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. When Sarah insisted on helping with dishes despite Marcus's protests, teasing him about his terrible drying technique, I caught his eye across the kitchen and saw real contentment there. Meanwhile, my own career flourished in unexpected ways. The skills I'd developed documenting the Sterling situation, organization, evidence gathering, clear communication during conflict, led to a promotion when a major client faced a similar crisis involving financial irregularities. My boss was impressed by my ability to navigate complex situations while maintaining professionalism and ethical standards. The way you handled your personal situation showed real leadership, she explained when offering me the promotion. We need someone who can stay calm under pressure and protect our clients' interests even when things get complicated. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Marcus and I sat in our favorite coffee shop, the same place where we'd met weekly before Isabella entered our lives. The autumn sun streamed through the windows, and for the first time in over a year, everything felt normal between us. I got some interesting news yesterday, Marcus said, stirring his coffee. Tyler ran into Isabella at a restaurant downtown. She's engaged again. Already. I couldn't hide my surprise. To a hedge fund manager whose family apparently meets the Sterling standards. The engagement announcement was in the society pages. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of Isabella with a tall, distinguished-looking man. Tyler said they looked perfect together, like Ken and Barbie, but with no actual personality visible. How do you feel about that? I asked carefully. Marcus considered the question thoughtfully. Relieved, actually. It confirms everything we learned about her. She wasn't heartbroken by our breakup. She was inconvenienced. Now she's found someone who fits her requirements better, and hopefully, he knows what he's getting into. And the fraud situation? I asked, since we'd been waiting to see if there would be any long-term consequences. David says we're in the clear. The Sterlings made sure all the vendors were paid and removed your information from their systems. Apparently, Victoria was more concerned about potential scandal than the money involved. As we prepared to leave, Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. Becca, I never properly thanked you. Not just for saving me from a disastrous marriage, but for never giving up on me, even when I was being a complete idiot. That's what family does, I replied simply. We see each other through the good decisions and the bad ones. We tell the truth when no one else will. I promise I'll do better at listening to you next time, he said with a grin. Especially if you tell me my girlfriend is manipulative. How about we aim for one who isn't? I laughed. Walking home that afternoon, I reflected on how the most painful experiences often become our greatest teachers. The Sterling wedding debacle had taught us about boundaries, self-worth, and the true meaning of family loyalty. It showed us that real relationships aren't built on social status or financial transactions, but on mutual respect, genuine care, and the courage to be authentic even when it's difficult. Most importantly, we learned that love, real love, doesn't require you to change who you are or abandon the people who matter most. It accepts you completely and makes you want to be your best self, not someone else's version of who you should be. A year later, Marcus and Sarah got engaged, with a simple proposal in the park where they'd had their first date, no massive diamond required. When they asked me to be the maid of honor, I accepted with joy, knowing this time it was real. Their wedding was everything this sterling celebration would never have been. Intimate, authentic, and filled with people who genuinely cared about them. The entire event cost less than Isabella's bridesmaid dresses, but it was infinitely more meaningful. As I watched my brother dance with his new wife, surrounded by friends and family who loved them for exactly who they were, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Sometimes the worst experiences lead us to the best outcomes. Sometimes standing up for what's right, even when it's terrifying, opens doors to possibilities we never imagined. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really does conquer all, as long as it's the real thing.